let's talk about like okay, like for example, like in my research in the classroom data that I've been working with, I've seen that when learners develop phonemic awareness, right, and decoding skills, their cognitive load shifts. Right? It's a matter of really kind of that mastering that we talk about a lot, and students have to master the language or take command of the language. They have more space for syntax and for meaning making, right? So, from your understanding of the bilingual brain, what's happening neurologically when that shift happens? When we make that shift from, just one words or maybe short phrases to a larger contextualized understanding.
Difficult because it depends on the type of bilingual brain. And for example, my bilingual brain is so different to my daughter's bilingual brain because I started being bilingual later on. That's why I can shift and I can take away my accent. And my daughter grew up bilingually and she doesn't have any accent in either of the languages she's learning. So if you take, for example, my bilingual brain or a bilingual brain of a child who starts learning later because families move from one country to another, that shift is going to happen slower and it's going to need more support, but it's going to happen progressively. However, if you're talking about a person, a bilingual child who was born in a country and has heritage parents, is that bilingual learner is listening to a heritage language at home, but is listening to English, for example, at school, it's very different because those connections are faster and they are more secure. Even if sometimes maybe they're actually less secure in the heritage language, or that's what the parents sometimes think because they're not verbalizing it so much and it's dormant in them and it comes later. But the connections are there. Sometimes what we need to remember is that if a student is not maybe verbalizing it, doesn't mean it's not there already. It's just maybe going back to the having that security or the fear of being judged or the fear of, am I sounding right? Is my
Mhm.
accent too much of an accent? I don't sound exactly like that speaker because I come from a different phonetic system and I can't produce that sound yet, but I do it
Yeah.
something similar until I get to that point. For me, for example, I remember it took me a while until I could do the sh language or the S plus consonant. We don't have that in
Yeah.
Spanish,
Yeah.
because that's why it's so easy to identify when Spanish speakers speak it because we put the E in front of it. Now we
Oh,
say
yes, that's true.
Spain,
It,
no Spain,
it's
until
fun.
you until you can in your brain sort of differentiate. Okay, hang on, I'm switching now. I'm speaking English, so I can't say speaking.
Well, you know how I
I
get
can say
around that though, Maria?
speaking.
You know how I get around that? Because I always write like I'll write San Gabriel on the board, right? And I'm like, say that, and they'll be like, San Gabriel. And I'm like, how come you didn't say Es San Gabriel? And they all look at each other. I'm like, and then I'll write a different one, like San Francisco, right? And they'll say
Yeah.
San Francisco. And I say, how come you didn't say Es San Francisco? Right. And so it's really, it's just a some kind of mechanism in our brains. I think that they switch on and off. I don't know.
Yeah,
But I
but it's the
always get
fact
them
that,
with that.
but because we don't have words that start with S plus consonant, we have S plus vowel in Spanish. So that's why
Yeah.
we can't do it. So we can do it eventually, of course, but
Yeah.
it takes training and it takes your brain to absorb it. And it's the same for English speakers who can produce the strong R. So until they get to do ra ra ra, then it's some can do it until eventually you train where to position your tongue. But that comes with time. And but what I'm saying is that type of fear of like, oh, I'm afraid of not sounding right. That's what sometimes makes that connection or that speaker to show what they can actually do. It takes a
Yeah.
bit longer.
You said something there that made me think like about the S and the vowel. But there's a city in where I live in my state. It's called Silver Springs, right? And they can't say that either. They'll be like S Silver Springs. So even when the vowel is after the S, they still struggle with it.
But Silva is SI, so then is S vowel, so it's
So
not
it
consonant.
Right. So they should say Silver Spring, no problem, but they don't. They say as
Yeah,
Silver Spring. They say as Silver Spring.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't heard any of my
It's a big
students
joke. It's a
doing
big joke
that.
that we have around here. So even that part, and I was thinking about what you just said, even that has some nuances to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're rack our brains trying to figure that one out.
And I guess it depends also where they come from, because all the different varieties of Spanish, for example, are different. Talking about, for example, Puerto Rican and the R's being an L, we all love Bad
Yeah.
Bunny and are
Puerto
very
Rico.
proud of what he did. It was such an
It's so
inspiration. I
yeah.
was really well. I have been the whole week or for 2 weeks now talking in lessons about him and his message of
Uh,
empowerment to encourage people to be themselves and in no matter what language,
yeah.
just go for it.
Right. Well, okay. So let me move on to the fifth question I have for you. I'm just skipping down one. So bilingualism doesn't start in school, right? It has to start at home. So, what role do families play in sustaining language development? And how can schools better partner with multilingual families instead of unintentionally silencing home languages?
I
Like
think
to hear
I did mention a little bit about it before to do with
with the
some
families?
families thinking the wrong thing, the old beliefs of, yes, we got to only speak English if we are in an English speaking country, because otherwise my child is going to get confused. And sadly, that's still going on, but not as much. I think I have seen a shift, and nowadays I can see more parents trying to do different approaches, doing OPOL, for example. I keep hearing that a lot, one parent, one language. So if there's a mixed couple and one speaks English the whole time and the other speaks Spanish the whole time, they're doing this OPOL and they're focusing, and the child is growing up bilingually. There's no fixed approach for it. I actually have written a book that comes up in a week about it. And it's a book about my experience raising my daughter and things that worked for us, things that didn't work for us, mistakes I made, because as parents, we all make mistakes, as teachers as well, of course. And acknowledging those mistakes are really helpful, because then you realize how you can help other people and things that you could have done differently. For example, the correcting all the time, that goes for parents and that goes for teachers. The overcorrecting a child when the child is learning a language, that
Mm,
doesn't help.
yeah.
It, you can model it and eventually it gets there, but sometimes they shut down and it's like, okay, I'm gonna just make a mistake. I don't want to say something because I'm gonna be overly corrected continuously. Things like that, or not exposing your child to the different cultural celebrations, or not raising your child with the different aspects of the culture is a big mistake. It's that some families are still making, but I think hopefully now with the internet and more possibilities of learning about globally about all the different cultures and learning from each other, that's slowly happening less. And I think that's changing a lot.
Let me share something with you, Maria. I'd like to hear your take on this about I don't know how it is where you are in the United States. In my region where I'm working, we're having some issues with students that are long-term learners, we call them, right? They're long-term ESL students because even though, and I'll give you a real good case where there's a group of students who are, I'm working with third graders right now who've been here, they were born here. Okay. They've been here since birth. They started pre-K and they're in third grade and they still struggle with acquiring English. So I had some meetings recently with parents and I talked to the mothers and I asked them, I go, how do you encourage them to speak English at home? And they just admitted that they actually don't. And when they're at school, the school embraces this whole idea of, honoring the heritage and honoring their languages and all. And I get that, and that's fine, but you can do that to a fault because now we have a situation where we have a lot of students who are not learning English. They're just speaking Spanish and they only hang around other Spanish speaking students. So they're kind of in their own little bubble and so they
Mm,
they go through school like this. They socially go through school. So there's no real urgency for them to learn it, right? amongst their little group of student friends, they don't have to speak it. When they go home, they don't have to speak it. And you have teachers that are so sympathetic to it that they don't have to speak it there either. So they don't feel like any pressure to learn it. You understand what I'm saying? And that's why we're
Yeah.
finding that fourth, fifth, sixth grade, seventh grade, and they're still not there. And it's becoming problematic. Tell me if you see
You-
something like that where you are.
You're describing exactly the opposite to what I'm used to seeing. It's very
Well,
interesting
don't come to the United
because
States because that's what you're going to find. Go on.
in England it was just the opposite, and I'm talking about not only to do with Spanish, but with many different countries.
Mhm.
Parents would just say, no, 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 we need to really speak English, which was hurting the heritage side. And now you're saying they're so focused on the heritage
Yes.
that actually
And
the
now learn
opposite is
English.
happening. That's so interesting.
It is
I
because like
don't
a
know. It's we got to then find the balance because yeah, we got to support heritage, of course, and identity, but
to a
they
fault.
are living in in an English speaking country.
It's
So
to a fault. For some people, it's to a fault. It's like they're
no.
not under. Look, I can tell you from my how I grew up. Right, I grew up bilingual. My parents didn't speak English, but once I started school, I had to learn English because everybody spoke English. So I felt the urgency, and it was we're talking about the 70s and 80s, right? So
Mm.
when I was in elementary, it's definitely the 70s. There was just no, not like what it is now. It's like you either sink or swim. Um, yeah, and it
Yeah,
was
I
a
think
matter of
it's
urgency.
not the same here at all. For example, with my daughter, she grew up in England, so and at home, I didn't do the only Spanish thing, this opal thing. We did a mixture because my husband doesn't speak Spanish, so we spoke English at home, but I would play with her and I gradually introduced Spanish without any pressure, really. And through visits to my family in Spain, gradually introducing it without feeling like you must learn it, cartoons, games, the whole thing like that. But we spoke English mainly.
Uh,
And then now we moved to Germany, so we don't speak German at home. Sometimes we try, because my husband does speak German, and my daughter now speaks perfect German as well. But we didn't, and she had to adapt. And of course, you had to learn German because we live
Yeah,
in Germany.
yeah,
So there's no way around it. You need to
yeah,
learn the language of the country you're living in
yep, yeah. And
to be in society.
I did find a little bit of a remedy to it. And one of the ways that I want to try to remedy this is I reach out to the families and offer them English classes, right? And so, like, I have this online group now where I'm giving online class. In fact, a little bit later today, when I'm done with you, I have another online class. So I'm like with you, like I'm doing the online class, and I'm working with some of these families because they want to learn English, right, for their advantages at their job, right? And so over time, I'm finding like these students, but they're actually the parents. They're eventually learning how they can help their children with their homework. So this is like a big
Yeah,
motivation for them. It's not just a matter of work, it's also a matter of helping their kids. So
yeah.
maybe getting the families into the classroom as well might remedy this. At least
I think
that's what I'm trying.
I think that's what it is because probably in the case, for example, of my daughter, she could integrate easily in England, of course, well, she was born in England and she could speak English. We spoke English at home as well. In Germany as well, she had the support of my husband, so she could go back and learn a few things. But if none of the parents speak the language of the country, maybe that's your root cause, and that's why that's the problem. That's what you need to tackle first.
Mhm.
Help the parents, and then the parents can work together with the children. If the
Yeah,
children think like, well, when parents don't speak it and they're living here, then doesn't matter. Then I'll be the same.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that would be that's at least that's the route I've been taking. It seems to be working.
yeah,
All right,
good.
let's get.
Difficult.
It is, man. We have to navigate so much, right, in this work.
Yeah.
So, if you could erase one myth about bilingual learners, one myth about them from everyday educators' minds, if you could erase that tomorrow, what would it be and why?
Difficult. There are different myths. I think I mentioned a few already, like the child who's not speaking. assuming that the child is not understanding and that there's nothing going on there. Sometimes maybe lower the expectations because we need to allow that flexibility or make them feel secure so that they can speak. And if we're assuming already, oh, he's not understanding, let me lower the task or let's make it easier for him or for her. But maybe he's understanding, he's just not participating orally because he's feeling a bit ashamed of the accent, or he's thinking it's not going to sound correct, or something is making him not feel comfortable. So assuming that the understanding is not happening is one of the myths. And another
Hmm.
one is linked to mistakes I made as a mother, that I said, the
Hmm.
constant correction, the need for correcting and modeling everything. There's a point, and I've done it. I've done it, my daughter, I've done it with students, explanations that were too long, giving too much. And I was thinking later, I like to reflect after lessons all the time. I was thinking maybe that student didn't need a lecture on so many examples of this. Maybe actually didn't even need the correction. It needed me to model it without correcting. Just if they make a mistake, moving on, I just repeat it but correctly without making the point on saying, "Oh, actually, this is not this, is that,"
Yeah.
because I myself don't like that as a I learning German. I'm making so many mistakes
I only know one
every
thing in Germany, and that's Wiener Schnitzel. That's it.
day.
I got
It's
two
a
myths.
very
I love
that's a
Wiener
good
Schnitzel. I
one.
love it. I love it. Now, I got two myths for you, okay? The first one is that using your L1 slows down English acquisition. That's a myth, right? That
Yeah,
using that, relying on that L1, it actually slows down the process. To me, that's a myth.
I
The other
agree.
myth that I have is that phonics isn't really necessary. To me, that's a major mistake that people make, especially with the lower proficiency level students. You have to include phonics in your instruction. I've been saying it for decades, and like, and people, I think, finally waking up from that fog. I'm like, okay, all right, you proved it. Let's include phonics, and better late than never, right?
I love phonics. I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy teaching phonics. Yes.
Yeah, I do too. Uh, it's not the most glamorous thing to do in English, but it's necessary, and you
But
see the
it's
results. You
lovely.
see the results.
Yeah.
It's in the data, so you can't argue it, right?
Question: in which year groups do you teach phonics?
Mostly my level ones, and I even do level twos. I'm working on level twos right now, but more like the more advanced phonics. Because a lot of students want to minimize their accent. They want to minimize their tendency to pronounce words a certain way. Their tendency to say a silver spring, for example. So, so
But
those
that
like
would be sorry, that would be in your current. You're saying you're teaching grade 3, no?
I'm in
You said
grade three, but I also teach adults. So I
uh
teach both. I teach the children, and I teach sometimes their parents.
okay,
Yep, it's not
great.
unusual. In fact, I have a kid. Last year he was teaching middle school, and his mother walks in. His mother was a student of mine, in a previous program that I taught years before, and like there. Now I remember when she was like pregnant, like, oh, my baby and whatever, and like that baby was years later was in my school, and I'm like,
Oh,
and then I saw the
wow.
similarities in the face. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember now. So yeah, we stick
Awesome.
around long enough, you start coming across the
Same.
families.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a few more minutes here. I'm gonna go ahead and throw these other questions at you. Let's start with this one. Okay, so like, let's take our lens back. Let's take a step back. So when we zoom out and we look at the system, we're talking about the policies and the curriculum and the assessments, right? Where do you see the biggest gaps for bilingual learners? Like, where is the big disconnect happening in your opinion?
Trying to possibly maybe assess students' comprehension on the target language
Hmm.
of certain things, the content, when maybe they do have the understanding of a particular subject in their heritage language, in the L1, but we're trying to assess sometimes different things. So assessment needs to be looked at because it's not uh, something is not right there.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes the way we're assessing certain things,
You know,
I
I
think
I
that's
I
the main
agree
one.
with you 100%. I designed this writing assessment, right? And what I found is in this particular writing assessment, it tells you a lot about what a student's able to process. It's not just a matter of, you know, it's not just a matter of how well they write or any of that stuff. There's a lot more, and I break it down. I'd like to share. It's on my website. I offer it for free because other instructors are using it, and I'm just kind of curious to see how other instructors would apply it. I'll send that to you. In
Yes,
fact,
please. That'd
yeah,
be
I'll
great.
include that. I'll include that in the links as well. So any teachers out there that are watching the program, if you're interested, it's available on my website for free. You can download it. It's got everything, the rubric and the explanations, and how to interpret the results. And I'm curious if you can give me any feedback if you do use it. I'd be very grateful for that.
Yeah, I'd love to have a look at that, please. Yes, that'd be
Excellent.
great.
I'll send that to you when we're offline. All right, so we're good. We're in agreement then about the assessment. It's definitely something that honestly they're missing the mark here, and I agree with you. There's a big disconnect there because what they're assessing, but you have to think about and consider why they're assessing those things. Okay, at least in the United States, I can't speak to what's going on in Europe, but in the United States, a lot of these assessments and their scores are tied to funding, right?
Yeah,
And how
it's the same.
schools, this all impacts the school overall, how they're assessed, and all of that plays into the political aspect of it. So there's a lot of politics involved,
Yeah.
and I get that, and I understand why. And there's so much emphasis on the assessment results here, which I think is really what's driving that is really the interest in acquiring the funding and securing it as opposed to ensuring that the students are actually learning. If that makes any sense. I
It's
mean,
the same in Europe.
because you can
It's
make an
exactly
argument.
the same.
You can make an argument that okay, just because a student does well in assessment, I mean, for all you know, they're guessing. You know,
Yeah.
it's only in the writing that you really get a real good look at what they understand, which is why I made the assessment, the writing assessment I told you about. All right, so we're in agreement. All right, let's move on because we're going to wind this down. We got a couple more I want to get to before we sign off. So educators that are watching right now, listening right now, what mindset shifts? What mindset shift is the most urgent? Like right now, if you could use your magic wand and say, okay, we're gonna change policy. We're gonna change this way of thinking. What does it truly look like to leverage students' home languages as instructional tools rather than treating them as barriers? Like how would you be able to, or what would you change about people's perspectives in that manner about whether they should be just openly accepting and embracing the home language or having it but with some rules and guidelines?
It should be a mixture between lowering expectations in terms of like not expecting the students to be perfect to start with. Yes, they're going to make mistakes because they're working with two languages, and relaxing that would make the students feel more confident as well, and they would feel more secure. They would want to making it more about communication to start with, and then later bringing the perfection gradually. That's one of the first things. And about the bringing the balance with the English and Spanish, for example, like at home. I know you're making me think about it now from the different point of view, because
If
I
you
was
need
all
to
the
take
time thinking that the heritage language is not being, but then you show me a different scenario in which the opposite is happening as well, in which they actually using so much the heritage language that then the English is not being used.
there,
So
yeah,
I guess because both things can happen, finding the equilibrium, finding the balance so that they can both coexist and grow together.
yeah,
But
I
it's very
agree.
difficult. Very
It
difficult
is.
because also what you said about education systems, politics, teachers not being 100% in control of everything that we can do sometimes in terms of assessment or other things as well, the curriculum itself. Sometimes many schools you don't control what curriculum you teach. I'm very lucky, for example, here I am very flexible. I can do, yes, we're using a textbook, but I'm also creating my resources and bringing them into the classroom. So I'm creating this scaffolding for the missing parts that I feel like they don't connect. But for example, in England, we were creating them ourselves. It was also okay, but it was a bit more rigid because we were working with management, and management was guiding everything. We had PPA time, preparation, and um, orientation time, but we were guided by management. So we didn't have so much freedom and flexibility. And in Spain, it's textbooks as well. So I don't know, in there, for example, you have textbooks as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but see, our I think a lot of the textbooks that we receive are really guided by data that is derived from assessments from monolingual learners. And in other words, they're the data that they're using to produce these curriculums aren't aren't based on what the results are from working with multilingual learners. So they kind of add pieces, they kind of amend it, they add pieces to satisfy uh, the when we have systems that are like with people that are within the system, the ESL world, for example, that are saying, well, a lot of these curriculums aren't taking into consideration multilingual learners, so they feel pressured to add something to it. But when I've looked at it quite with a magnifying glass, honestly, and it seems like it was just kind of an afterthought. It wasn't really built into
Mm.
the actual curriculum development. It was more like an add-on. And so it doesn't, because a lot of the
Taking
data,
boxes.
yeah, basically checking
Yes.
the box.
Yeah.
So it goes way over their heads. In fact, it probably goes over
Mhm.
the heads of the regular gen ed students.
Yeah.
And so we have to scaffold from here to the clouds,
Yeah.
differentiate from here to heaven,
Yeah.
so that they could actually grasp some of it. And
Yeah.
so that's where we are. But here's the issue: like administration, and they're just doing their job. I'm not going to bash any administrators for coming down
No,
on
they're all the
teachers
same.
about it, because they're under the same gun.
Yeah.
But honestly, I mean, we have to have this conversation. Like, if you're allowing me, you're telling me, okay, do what, uh differentiate the lesson so that the student can actually produce content. Okay. But when I do that, and then you say, okay, well, they're being tested on the moon,
Yeah. Yeah. That's the
and then they
problem.
don't perform well, who do
Yeah.
they blame? They blame us.
Yeah.
So it's like, on the one hand, I don't know, it's a tightrope. You have to walk the tightrope,
Yeah.
and it's messy,
It's
and
very.
honestly, there's a lot of politics involved. And like I said, I don't
Yeah.
blame the administrators, because they're just walking a tightrope themselves. But
Yeah.
we're all gonna, we're all in the boat together. So if it sinks, we all sink together.
And that's why we need to help each other in any way we can. Yes.
And
That's
I
what
think
my
that
channel is about. Bilingual Cerebros was about that, trying to help my students, but then trying to help other students that I don't know around the world, but teachers and families. So if
it
I
has
could in any way support
it has
with
to be
resources or yeah,
it has to be collectively done. It
yeah,
can't just be the teachers. It can't just be the school staff trying to reach out to the families. The families have to buy into it, right? The families have to put the urgency and work with the students. The students themselves have to come to school, and the other teachers have to say, okay, we have to be part of this process. We can't just allow them to exist in these bubbles, because they don't feel the need to learn English.
yeah,
And so we are, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grade. And they're like, why aren't these kids doing any? Why are they still in ESOL? Why are they still in ESL? They've been here since pre-K. This is
yeah.
why. Because as a collective, we don't we don't urge them to do it. We don't make it like necessary for them to do it. And that's
I
our
agree.
that's our mistake. So you can't just point to the teacher. You just can't point to the principal. You have to look at the entire circle, the cycle, if you will, from parent all the way to the school board. All of them are involved in this process, and you can't just put the blame on one person. And it's
No.
unfortunate, but we do get the blame a lot of the times.
Always, yes.
It's easy to blame the teacher, right?
Especially now, yes. In the 80s, it was different.
Yeah,
Teachers were gods. Now, everything that is wrong is the teacher's fault. You haven't done
right,
this right. This is wrong. We've
right,
become, it's just changed totally. Yeah.
right. When I was
Yeah.
growing up, the onus was on the student. The student had to perform. The student had to do it. He was responsible. She was responsible.
Mhm.
Now it's the teacher's
Yeah.
responsibility. Now it's the principal's responsibility, and that ain't fair because we're trying our
Yeah.
hardest. You know that. You
Mhm.
put a lot of time and a lot of work into what you do, so you know what we're doing because you're doing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can beat that dead horse.
Yeah. I don't know if that's ever going to change.
It may not, but you know something? It doesn't mean we can't talk about
Yes. At least we have that. Yeah. We have to be able to complain and it
it.
helps a bit. Yeah.
All right, so let's close out this conversation with this one thing. I want you to talk about let's end it on a high note. Let's end it on what bilingual success looks like. Bilingualism, the success stories, Maria. Tell me what it looks like in your end of the world.
Student that feels happy in both languages, that feels secure and feels that has the identity, secure identity. So his English identity can switch between languages with no problem, and is happy with the heritage and all the culture and the family and everything that comes from the family is he or she is proud of, and at the same time can switch between one language and the other with no problem. And that's for me the ideal world. And that's, I think, what I have achieved with my daughter. I'm very happy about that, that she feels very secure in her identity. But identity needs to come first, that they feel they know who they are in both languages or three languages, or how many languages you want to throw at them.
The more the merrier, right? As we say. Maria Martinez, everyone. Maria, you've been
Thank
a
you.
fantastic guest. I love the fact all the things you said were wonderful, and I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time. And if you want to drop any links to me, I'll include them in the description for people who are watching and may want to look at some of your work, your books, your website. I'm sure I'm gonna have it somewhere on this screen here as and when I get to the editing part. I'll put your
I sent to you.
website and any other materials you want me to share with the audience, please send them my way, and I'll include
Mhm.
those either in the pinned comment or in the description. Any last thoughts before we sign off, Miss Maria?
Nothing. It's been a real pleasure talking to you about all of these deep and profound issues that we don't have solutions for. We some things are going very well, some things have improved, I can say,
Yes,
but others are not in our hands. So all we can do is continue smiling, help each
yes.
other, and keep hoping for the best. And I think
Well,
if we are all in this together, we help each other, we will go far.
we share these resources, Maria, which is why I'm sharing that right assessment for you because it's designed by
Yes.
somebody like yourself who works with these students. And I think I found something that works, you know. And like I said, I'd like to hear what you think of
Excellent.
it.
Yes,
Anyway,
please. I'm looking forward to seeing
everyone.
it.
Me too. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about it. All right, everyone, don't hang up. Until next time, God bless.
Thank you.